Well, let's get the big news out of the way first, shall we? Everybody's talking about it right now. Why did Trump get up today, have this big press conference? Pam Bondi's there, Pete Hegseth behind him, all the big shots in the room. He got up and said this.
I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back. Under the authorities vested in me as the President of the United States, I'm officially invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. You know what that is? And placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control, and you'll be meeting the people that will be directly involved with that. Very good people, but they're tough, and they know what's happening, and they've done it before. In addition, I'm deploying the National Guard to help reestablish law, order, and public safety in Washington, D.C., and they're going to be allowed to do their job properly.
Right? Why? We'll get to the communist motivations for it and why they're upset, but one of the big reasons why is, well, I'll tell you what, pause on that. Remember when we talked about job interviews before? You and me. I've given you advice on job interviews, and one of the main things, maybe the main thing, show up looking nice, dressed up. It doesn't mean you have to have a $1,000 suit on, but whatever your best clothes are, dress up. No cut-off shorts. No one wants to see your tattoos. Put on some decent clothes and show up for your job interview. Why? First impressions matter a lot. Appearance matters a lot. Did you know? Here's a little historical tidbit you may not know. Have you ever been to D.C.? Even if you haven't, I know you've seen pictures of it. You know what parts of it look like. Pretty fancy, right? All that white marble, pillars, and these monuments here. Did you know that was done intentionally by the founders of this country? Why? These were small government people. They didn't want D.C. to be super powerful or anything like that. They didn't want a kingdom. Why did they intentionally create something that looked so good? Because they understood foreign dignitaries would visit the United States of America. They would visit our nation's capital, and what they saw when they got there matters. How you dress when you show up for a job interview, for a first date. It does matter, and anyone who tells you it doesn't is a moron. It matters that Washington, D.C., the capital of our nation, is a dump. A dangerous dump. Murders through the roof. Higher crime rate than Mexico freaking City. Carjackings. Break-ins. It is a total dump. I won't even take my family there now. And look, Trump, who's about, I think Friday, he's going into negotiations with Vladimir Putin. He brought up this exact thing.
And it's embarrassing for me to be up here. You know, I'm going to see Putin. I'm going to Russia on Friday. I don't like being up here talking about how unsafe and how dirty and disgusting this once beautiful capital was.
Impressions matter. I'll tell you something. You know, I want to go to Turkey one day. Stay with me. You know why I want to go to Turkey? Because coming back, I was just flying through, we had a layover in Istanbul, both ways. A layover in Istanbul. The airport was unbelievable. It was huge. It was nice. Great food. All the employees were dressed to the nines. Very pleasant. And that impression of Istanbul, of Turkey, made me want to go back and visit one day. Impressions matter. It matters that Washington, D.C., and let me expand this a little bit more. It matters that America's cities, our biggest cities, are dumps. It matters that the murder is high, that there are homeless people everywhere, that people run amok. It does matter. And maybe you're sitting there in rural America right now, as I am, and you're saying to yourself, I don't care about the city, screw the cities. I understand that sentiment. I grew up in Montana. I get that sentiment all the way. I don't live in New York City or Washington, D.C. I understand it. But in Japan, in Saudi Arabia, in Peru, What's on the billboards for America? New York, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles. As much as I may love Montana, they're not putting that on the billboard. The fact that our cities are a crime-ridden, murder-filled dump is important. It does matter. And I want you to understand something else, because we're about to get into the communist motivations for why they're this way, but you know it's a choice, right? This is something that we don't realize, we Americans don't realize, because we've gotten used to, well, cities are full of crime. Cities are dirty. Cities are full of crime. I probably can't send your daughter there for the weekend, not without a chaperone. That's what we've gotten used to. There are cities all over the world that are sparkling clean. Go to Tokyo one day. Way more people than any city in America. You can put your wife out on the street and have her walk 10 city blocks at 2 a.m. on a Saturday night, and she'll come back to you safe and sound. There are cities all across the world that are not dirty. They're not full of crime. They're not full of murderers. American cities are, because Democrats are evil, crime-loving communists, and they've destroyed our cities. Donald Trump is stepping in to clean up murder and rape and robbery. And today, in response to this, you saw a lot of this.
One of the things that we have seen over and over from the president, from his team, Stephen Miller saying it's like Baghdad in Ethiopia. They seem to hold their harshest criticism sometimes for cities that are majority black and brown.
Chris, to be honest with you, I'm trying to hold my temper. I think there's an ongoing argument that he's having in his head with Black Lives Matter. There's an ongoing argument that he's having with the questions around criminal justice reform and police reform. It's interesting that he really doesn't really care about what's actually happening in D.C. on a certain level, because he's not trying to get at the underlying root causes.
Well, the root causes. It wasn't just MSNBC. It's been Democrat after Democrat, media channel after media channel. This was CNN.
And just as we go to break, I should note that the most violent moment in recent history in D.C. was January 6th. And it was an attack on the United States Capitol by a lot of people who were doing it in the name of Donald Trump. And it included, the people who were hurt included members of law enforcement.
That's an insane person. So why are they doing that today? Telling outright ridiculous lies like that. Why the response to this? Well, this is where we dig into communism and what they want. First of all, remember something. We don't have Democrats in America anymore. We have communists. That's what they are. And once you understand that's what they are, then you can move from there and understand why they say and do what they do. In the Soviet Union, during their revolution, when the Bolsheviks were having their revolution, trying to conquer the government, trying to win, did you know they opened up the prison doors? And not just a couple either. There were political prisoners, yes, but they said, no. Get the keys and open up the doors for everybody. Why would you do that? Those prisons were full of, like all prisons are, full of murderers and rapists and thieves. Why would you want them on the streets? But they actually took an extra step in the Soviet Union. They turned loose the murderers and the rapists and the thieves. And then, tell me if any of this sounds familiar, they put into place judges and the like, prosecutors, who would protect the murderers and rapists and thieves. One story I've told you before about a thief pulling a knife on a military veteran. The military veteran disarms him, hurts him. The military veteran was thrown in the gulag for that. The criminals are to be protected. The good people who try to stop them are to be thrown in prison. None of this sounds familiar, does it? So why is it communists do this? Why did they do this in the Soviet Union, in New York City, in Washington, D.C., in Los Angeles, and city after city after city? Because, well, think about a family. A happy, stable family. Mom, dad, kids, happy, content, stable. You want to break that family up. You want to destroy it. You're trying to have a revolution. Introduce a violent dog into the home. Go adopt some deranged pit bull or something like that. Starts biting everybody, tearing up the furniture. Is that going to in some way destabilize what was a stable home? Communists love violent criminals for the exact same reason. A stable, happy, content society will not embrace an evil communist revolution, but a society where people are afraid will. Destabilization. That is the name of the game. While the revolution is ongoing, they want destabilization. And this is why I have to step in here now and have a conversation with you. And it's not my job to police your words, but please stop using the term soft on crime. I still see so many people on the right using this term. They're soft on crime. These soft on crime DAs. It's Democrats' soft on crime policies. They're not soft on crime. They want people murdered. When the Democrat judge and the Democrat DA set the serial rapist loose from jail and he goes and rapes some 50-year-old woman, they're not sitting around saying, "Oh, dang it. I thought he turned his life around. I was just being soft on crime." They wanted her raped. They want you robbed. They want you assaulted. They want you murdered. They want your daughter raped. They're not soft on crime. They're pro-crime. They've done this. Democrats have done this to America's cities on purpose. And as long as we play this game of make-believe where it's a whoops, I spilled the milk and we did some crime, then we can never formally take on these communists in a way that will win. We have violent crime in our cities because Democrats want violent crime in the cities. They are pro-murder, pro-rape, pro-robbery. And this brings me to what Donald Trump did. He had to. He had no choice. This is where we're at now. A terrible set of circumstances. We now have to have Big Daddy government step in to stop innocent people from being murdered. I didn't want it to be this way. Trump mentioned New York. We might have to do the same thing in Chicago, and maybe he will have to if he can legally do so. And that's not what I want. I assume that's not what you want. But this is what happens when you allow the communists to take over our cities and they turn the jails loose. Eventually, somebody with a heavy hand is going to have to step in. Just please understand this. It's the most important part of this entire thing. Violent crime is what Democrats want. And it's why they're so angry that he's going to step in today and clean it up. When they look at more murders in Washington, D.C. per 100,000 people than really virtually any other city on the planet, they're not bummed about it. They're thrilled. And it's also why, as you see your liberal Aunt Peggy citing the crime stats going down, it's also why they moved to conquer every single government agency they could. What that does is it gives them the legitimacy of the lie. You see, if you want violent crime to go up in D.C., you know that's not going to be popular, so you simply put communists in place all over the police department who will lie about the violent crime, thus giving the media members and Democrats cover to say violent crime has gone down, when really we just had an article out last week where we discovered the commanders in Washington, D.C., the police commanders routinely show up on the job and talk people out, talk their officers out of reporting crime the way it is. It's all a lie because they want you murdered and raped. They just don't want you to know that's what they want. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I am right. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.